beautiful friends. If you haven't watched the previous video, Meeting My Spirit Guide, Part 1, I would highly recommend watching it first, as it explains who Aura is and how this contact all came about. Well, the visit I want to tell you about today, although it didn't happen in this sequence, was our trip into the afterlife. I've not shared this information in full with anyone, so I guess now is the time. Aura asked me to close my eyes, and I quickly sunk into a meditative state until a few moments later, I could see that I was no longer in my home, but was in a dome-shaped, pure white room. It was about the size of my living room, but the ceiling curved upward into an egg-shaped dome. Aura gave me a minute to take it all in, and then explained that she would be taking me on a tour of the spirit side, or what humans call the afterlife, or the other side. As I watched, the room we were in kind of faded out, and we were standing on a hill above a river. Aura told me this was referred to as the gathering point. What I saw were beings of light escorting people who Aura said had just passed from life into an area that looked a lot like an airport lounge or waiting room with comfortable chairs stationed throughout. I asked Aura why these people, if they're dead, still look like they did when they were alive. To me, they just looked like any other human you might see on Earth. Well, she explained that this is because they still hold the belief that this is who they are. The belief is a thought form, projected outward as a physical-looking body. Well, the guides began organizing the people into various rows or lines. And as I watched, one of the rows of individuals led to a river with a large yacht parked beside a dock. Another led to a large passenger plane that some were beginning to board. I asked Aura what was going on, and she explained that some souls, through their religious beliefs, were told that when they die, there would be angels waiting to take them to heaven. And they believed that the guides were the angels taking them home. Well, soon, the plane began slowly moving toward an open area to the right. At the same moment, the boat began moving in that same direction. Well, Aura explained that the movement of these vehicles was only an illusion to give the appearance of having reached a destination. This also helps to calm the soul, so it feels it's safe and being looked after, and gives them the rest needed to feel protected from any potential danger. Here, Aura made a point that those souls who are more spiritually aware will not need this particular stage of transition because they've already learned that the spirit side is just a state of mind. And they're able to create their passing in a way that suits them, in peace, or even in joy. These more awakened beings are often met by a beloved family member, maybe someone they loved while on Earth, or a member of their etheric or galactic family, or are even instantly awakened back into the life that they just left before incarnating. It can be that simple. As I watched, the scene in front of us began dissolving again, and Aura said that we would be moving on. She explained that the Earth is a very seductive planet, and once a soul has incarnated as a physical human, when they die, they're often pulled to want to immediately return into another physical life and will therefore need to be cleansed of the pollution, the beliefs and attitudes that they picked up while being human. Sometimes this cleansing is as simple as passing through a sort of a decontamination chamber, especially for those who have become awakened back to spirit within their lifetime. However, most humans who are not yet that spiritually aware have a lot of fear around death and the process of dying. And their transition from life can be very traumatic, especially for those who've died through great distress, like a car or plane accident or a fire, or maybe they were murdered or died while in terror. Aura explained that these souls need to be talked down, so to speak. The guides will gently explain to them that they're going to be taken to a place where they can rest and heal from the fright they just endured. Aura said that this was called the cleansing sphere. She took me to a place that looked a lot like a hospital, only much brighter and more open than those I've seen on Earth. There were huge windows that flooded the space with golden light, overlooking beautiful park-like grounds with rolling hills and green trees and a stone pathway lined with flowers. I was stunned by the beauty. Inside this huge space were beds with lots of privacy and space between them. There were humans lying in the beds and what appeared to be nurses and doctors in attendance. These angelic caregivers were dressed all in white, and their bodies glowed with a brilliant light. They spent their time providing comfort and assistance to those resting in bed. One man was being given a golden liquid to drink, as if it were a medicine of some kind. Well, I asked Aura what it was, and she said it was a sort of liquid light. As we kind of floated down the line of beds, we saw one angelic nurse giving a woman a treatment of some kind. She was holding a circular light above the head of the woman. Aura told me that the object was created from layers of light, and this particular spectrum of light would help to illuminate and elevate the soul back into its former essence. Some of these souls have passed from life in a state of fear, others in a state of anger. Some who have passed while in a coma arrive onto the spirit side still believing that they're in a coma. Some, before death, have been paralyzed, maybe for years, and they still believe that they can't walk. And it will take a lot of patient encouragement to help them to understand that there's no longer anything wrong with them. We saw a couple of the newly dead wearing oxygen masks. One was hooked up to an IV and in a wheelchair. because they believe they're not well. Even though they no longer have a body, they still manifest an illusion of a body by holding on to the impression of who they were in their life. Some who were in great pain still carry within them the belief that they're still in agony, because it's an inner pain, a state of distress that comes from former beliefs of suffering. These patients are constantly comforted and counseled by these angelic doctors and nurses, and surrounded by light and love, while allowed to rest and regain strength. Each of these patients will have as much time as they need to recover and begin to remember who they truly are. Ora said, the most tragic are the souls who, in life, believe that once they die, that's all there is, and they will simply cease to exist. So at transition, from their perspective, there's nothing, because they're dead. In this case, it's very difficult for the angelic helpers to get through to them. All they can really do is to immerse them in surroundings that can demonstrate to them that they're still alive. Well, before moving on, Ora described how each incarnated being throughout life will create their own individual reality, and therefore at death will find itself in a reality similar to the one it had built for itself through its, beliefs and perceptions and actions. She said, what a soul does on earth will dictate where it will exist in the afterlife realms. Ora explained that the next realm we would visit was a place for those souls who have never been able to release their anger or violence and have carried these tendencies into the spirit realm. She referred to this location as a sort of between realm, inhabited by those who have not yet reached the cleansing spheres. Well, what I saw was what looked like a pleasant residential neighborhood, like you might see on many places on Earth, with blue skies and nicely landscaped houses and green lawns and maybe an occasional vehicle parked in the driveway. There were people of both genders and various races all living in this little community. I noticed that there was a road leading out of the neighborhood, and I asked Ora where the road went. Well, she stated that the road was only an illusion, and if any of the residents attempted to drive out of the community, would find the road would only lead them back into their neighborhood again. And this reminded me of the Truman Show, when he tried to leave town, but always found himself back in the same place. Well, Ora said that this is because this realm is comprised of human souls who have never learned to control their anger and therefore are not allowed to leave this place until they learn this lesson. Because if they haven't managed to clear that anger from their soul, they will undoubtedly become angry again. And the way this realm is set up, when this happens, the anger energy manifests around them. With this, Ora asked me to stand and observe one of the houses. Well, in front of the house, there were two men arguing and yelling at each other. As we watched, the sky above became dark, and everything around them started falling apart. When one man attempted to strike the other, he wasn't able to, and that blow was directed back to himself. With each attempt, the man would fall back as if being hit himself. He was unable to harm the other person. The anger began affecting everything around them. The roofs of their houses collapsed, and their floors fell in. The furniture fell over, and the trees and shrubs and flowers in their gardens wilted and died. Their beautiful homes were destroyed by their anger, and they were left sitting among the ruins. Then, as we watched, an angelic advisor came up to the men and explained that it was their own anger that had devastated everything around them, and that they would need to learn to reach a higher vibrational understanding before they could move into the more elevated realms of the cleansing sphere. The advisor explained that a soul can only exist in a reality that correlates with its vibrational rate. That a soul's frequency is what places the individual into a certain domain of existence. The bottom line for all souls is what you do on earth will dictate where you will land on the other side. Well, once the men calmed down and understood how this all works, everything started coming back together. Their houses began to magically repair, and the floor became solid again, the roof repaired, the furniture back in its place. This is all meant to teach that this anger is a dangerous force that exists within the soul and must be released before they're allowed into the higher heavenly realms. Ora said that sometimes this takes the soul's many of these violent outbursts to learn this lesson. And until it's dealt with, these souls must live in isolation so as not to pollute the other realms. They must learn that anger is a fear reaction, often of the disappointments that their life had to offer. They need to finally realize that they're limiting their existence and taking away all the goodness and harmony of life. I remember Jerry Hicks one time asked Abraham, why doesn't Source just take all the rapists and murderers and stick them all onto one island, and then they can just do all their damage to each other rather than to those who don't deserve to be harmed? Well, Abraham told Jerry that's exactly how it does work, and explained very much what Ora and I had just seen. Well, as Ora and I continued, we came to a place that looked a lot like a playground with a little miniature castle-like structure in the center. There were several children, some with stuffed animals or brightly colorful toys, and some were petting kittens or playing with puppies. It was like a lovely fairy tale landscape. I asked what this was, and Ora explained that there are many children who pass the earth plane very tragically from horrible abuse, leaving them with huge emotional scars. And in order to recover, they are wrapped in love and the support of these glowing angels of light. These kids will need to learn to be able to trust again. And being with other children in a joyful place of high vibration allows for this healing to take place. They're surrounded by loving beings and constantly reassured until they're able to leave those terrible memories behind and become the free, happy spirits that they really are at core. It was such a tender and uplifting scene. I felt so happy that this could happen for these little ones. Aura said that the most important purpose of this cleansing sphere is to purify the soul of the lower earth densities, so the soul will not be drawn to return into a similar incarnation and once again become lost in a cycle of sadness and terror. Unfortunately, there are some souls who refuse the help of these angelic advisors, and their only desire is to return to the body. There are, in fact, some that when they die and are outside of their physical form, they actually try to crawl back inside their deceased body. This stubbornness is very hard for the spirit guides to get through to them and help. And often, even with their assistance, these souls are pulled back into the earth frequency and will reincarnate at the first opportunity. But to leave this realm on a happier note, Aura stressed that these divine advisors are so good at their job, even if it takes thousands of years in our time, to convince a troubled soul of its divine essence. Nearly all will be helped in one way or another until they're finally able to move on into the next heavenly realm. Now, stay tuned for part 3 when Aura continues her tour of this fascinating afterlife realm. See you then. Bye-bye.